Today's interview is with Daylon, a growth, design, and e-commerce architect. He helps build technology ventures, communities, and products around people with a deep care about the impact on our world. We asked Daylon, "What's your favorite book and why for both business and non-business?" And he replied, "Every book I've read has taught me something, so it's challenging to choose favorites. The first business book I read that perhaps inspired me to read more was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. The non-business book that has connected to my being most deeply would be Poems in the Prophet by Khalil Gibran." We asked Daylon if there was a specific moment when something he read in a book helped him. He replied, "There were multiple occasions that books I read helped me, but what left a deeper impression was when a friend mentioned how a book I recommended changed his life. The book was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and that revelation was special because I realized a single idea has the power to change a person's trajectory. From that book, he started looking out for omens in his life and being more sensitive about the opportunities around him. He is now transitioning from being a corporate employee to an entrepreneur." We asked Daylon about the books that had the biggest impact on him, and he responded, "Ayn Rand's writings and the philosophy of objectivism helped me understand the rules of winning in a society driven by capitalism. Self-help classics like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and How to Win Friends and Influence People teach principles I still apply today at work. Books didn't change my career path, people whom I knew and interacted with did." We asked Daylon, "What books would you recommend to youngsters interested in your professional path?" And he responded, "Read books on subjects that you're interested in. Read books that challenge you and elevate your thinking. If you absolutely need a recommendation, read How to Read a Book by Mortimer J. Adler. Adler shares this idea of synoptical reading, which will help you learn about a subject with depth." We asked Daylon, "We're interested in finding out more about your reading habits. How often do you read and in what format?" And he responded, "I'm definitely an auditory learner. I read about 3 to 4 nonfiction books a month via audiobooks. I haven't been successful in catching up with my periodicals like Wired and Harvard Business Review magazine." We asked Daylon how he makes time for reading, and he responded, "I use my commuting and waiting time as opportunities to listen to audiobooks." We also wanted to know if Daylon takes notes or if he has any other technique for conquering the torrent of information, and he told us, "I realized I retained information I listened to well. What I try to do to commit the information to memory is to share what I learned with others. As you said, torrent of information, we often forget to ask ourselves, how is this relevant and why are we reading it? We might be able to manage information better if we understood that there's a pecking order to the source of information. Who writes it? How was it researched? And is it true?" We also asked Daylon how he chooses the books to read next, and he responded, "I concurrently read a philosophical or spiritual book as is lighter and a business book. If I crave for stories, I read biographies or narrative journalism. A lot of what I read is also related to the work I do. I enjoy reading about mental models as the effect is more meta-level and transferable versus a book focused on technical skills that is domain-specific." We also asked Daylon if he prioritizes the books recommended by certain people, and he responded, "Yes, if I read a biography by a business titan or prime mover and he or she recommends a particular title, I would read it next. For example, I found out about Sam Walton's biography from Jeff Bezos' quotes in The Everything Store by Brad Stone. They're both great books to read if you're in e-commerce or retail, answering your earlier question." Our next question was, "You run several side projects. What do you do when you feel overwhelmed or stressed? Do you have any routines or habits that help you cope with periods when you feel stretched?" Daylon responded, "I'll swim, take walks in nature, or go for a Japanese onsen bath. I do think a daily practice of mindfulness is useful, such as mindful breathing in a park for 10 minutes daily in the morning." For our next question, we wanted to know, what are some of the biggest challenges of people working in modern environments? We're asking this because on your website, you mentioned how important it is nowadays for teams to be able to focus. To this question, Daylon responded, "The hardest problems have always been people problems because humans are unpredictable by nature. All the more it's paramount for us to understand that there's another human being on the other side of the screen. Technology is not a replacement for human connection and a handshake, and I realize many organizations have become incredibly siloed today to the extent of being counterproductive. Our next question was, since 2015, you've been running a monthly nonfiction book club with friends. We're curious to find out more about it. How did your life look like back when you started it? What were your reasons for starting it, and what expectations did you have in mind? Were there any unexpected outcomes? Daylon replied, I enjoy reading and mostly read nonfiction books. I wanted to stay disciplined then about reading one book a month by committing to share it with friends. However, no one believed in the idea, and quick surveys indicated only a minority of my friends read. I started it with a few friends then, and we have been growing by word of mouth. I've now exceeded what I've committed to and have made new friends who are avid readers. For our last question, we wanted to know, what book are you currently reading and what are you expecting to gain from it? Daylon replied, I'm reading The Box, How the Shipping Container Made the World Smaller and the Economy Bigger by Mark Levinson. I'm hoping it'll help me understand containerization as a mental model to be applied to business problems, hopefully for work. This was our interview with Daylon So. If you want to find out more about him and his projects, visit daylonso.com. You can also find all the books and links mentioned in this interview in the video description. Thank you!